This video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends.
Hey guys, OniMaru here. I know this isn't the typical thing I do, this isn't a formal video, this is me needing to talk about Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0, which just recently dropped and has been in my head for the past 3 days, and I just really need to get my thoughts out there. Evangelion has been a special series for me that's been, followed me a majority of my life, so this has been like 26 years in the making. It finally all just ended. So this is that video. There's just so much to unpack. And if that's not an indicator that there will be spoilers, then I'm telling you there has to be spoilers because I need to talk about it. So if you're good with that, let's move forward. Actually, before that, I need to take a quick second to thank the sponsor for this video. So,
let's talk about Raid Shadow Legends, a game that I only meant to play for 5 minutes and ended up sinking hours into. It's basically a gacha game meets traditional fantasy RPG. Now, I've purposely been avoiding gacha games like the plague, but what makes Raid addicting are its unique champions. They each come with their own faction, and each faction has a rich lore behind it. Take the Bannerlords, for example, who are the game's medieval knights, a staple for any fantasy setting. We've got my two personal favorites, the Stag Knight, this beast of a support that looks amazing and can wreck your enemy's defense all at once. And then we've got Minaya. She's hot. What got me hooked on the game is how much variety the game gives on how to level up your champs. For someone constantly short on time, I honestly love that the game has the multi-battle function that lets me keep making progress at my leisure. And in case you need proof that I exist in game, I go by Lord OniMaru, because as always, OniMaru was taken. If you're interested, Raid is completely free to play on both your mobile device and desktop. Now's actually the perfect time to join because Raid has got so much going on this month with special fusion events, tournaments, and they just dropped 5 sick new champions that I'm already in the process of trying to get. If you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you have to do is hit the link in the description or scan my QR code and you'll get an epic hero, Chonoru, who's amazing in the Doom Tower, 200k silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in game. Now, back to the video.
So getting back into it, I'm not gonna cover everything, but one of the awesome scenes was Gendo and Shinji finally getting to face each other in like mirror Eva units and duke it out. I'm like, oh my God, is this going on? Is this happening? Yes, this is what we've been needing. I didn't even know I needed it until I saw that it was happening. And it wasn't like a full out fight. It just kept getting more gradually ridiculous, but that was fun in its own way. It kind of made me think back to the old Gainax days, just so over the top. But that was very fun, and I'm glad it got to play out that way, and it led to them actually finally talking and seeing that Gendo was truly afraid of Shinji, that he actually had to bring up his AT field, and that was kind of something you had kind of an inkling of. You figured that was the case in the original TV series, but here was more than enough confirmation, and that we finally got to see more into his backstory, like to flesh out more of his actual motivations beyond just his obsession to bring Yui back. That was nice, and kind of seeing that he literally is just Shinji with glasses, or was just Shinji with glasses. He's what Shinji would have been if, he kind of went down that trajectory and grew up. I also did like the symbolism that they were doing there with Shinji being Eva Unit 1, Gendo being the Mark 13, and his representing like kind of despair, while Shinji's represented hope, kind of father, son, beginning and end. Shinji's more of like representing maybe the possibility for a new future, hope, a new path, while, Gendo represents kind of the past, kind of more of like a dead end. Like, this is kind of it, all roads converge here. And that's what the struggle was between Unit 1 and the beginning and the end. And I thought that was pretty cool symbolism. And I think it also ties back to the whole titling of the movie, actually, now that came together. Why was it, 3.0 plus 1.0? And I could be totally wrong here, but 3.0 plus 1.0, I think it's supposed to signify, a drastic departure in the timelines from 1.0 to where 3.0 was, and pretty much this last film carries on in that 3.0 timeline, which is the most divergent timeline, and sort of it represents that kind of merging or a confrontation between the original timeline and the old timeline, or the beginning and the end. 3.0 plus 1.0 could also reference the number 13, which they were mentioning a lot, or 13 versus 1. And they were clearly trying to avoid using the number 4, which means death in Japanese, and it's also kind of unlucky, because here they weren't really, death would mean this is all coming to an end, kind of like End of Evangelion and everything's kind of going to shit. But where here, things are being rewritten. There's a new path, there's a new future. So 4 would have been too negative. So that's why it was more of a 3.0 plus 1.0. At least that's my take. And that was all being referenced there. I do have to mention, I did catch that reference to End Evangelion with Ritsuko now being the one to shoot Gendo instead of him shooting her. Unfortunately, she didn't kill him, but she kind of did reveal he has no freaking eyes, revealing that he was truly a monster all along. But really the biggest part about the movie was like the last 30 minutes or so, which is kind of where everything sort of came to an end. It gave us the most closure, and it's actually what I wrestled with the most. I had a lot of feelings. I kind of finished the movie not knowing how I felt. I'm like, I got the message, I got what's happening, but I don't know if I like it. And I think part of that, after kind of thinking about it some more, rewatching it a few times, was because I had certain expectations. It always comes down to expectations, doesn't it? Because after waiting so long for this movie and kind of where End of Evangelion left off, I do love that movie, but a small part of me did want to see Asuka and Shinji get a happy ending, kind of together, kind of reconcile, have a healthy relationship, stuff like that. And to not see that play out, I kind of felt a little robbed of that. But I think the other side to that was that he ended up with Mari. And I don't hate Mari, but I feel like she was not developed at all. So it kind of felt like she was shoehorned at the end, and like, let's just give him someone. Let's have him be with someone. Let's have it make sense. She doesn't have anyone else. He doesn't have anyone. You know what? Let's put them together. It works out. And I don't know. I just felt like it's like I think on paper it works, but it doesn't feel believable. But then after rewatching it a few times and really thinking about it, I think it does make the most sense. I think the ending worked because it was an ending that everyone could be happy, not just Shinji, and that involved Evangelion's not existing. But on the subject of Mari and why it had to be Mari, or at least why it makes sense, is because Mari is the only one that I noticed that did not, she had like some sort of connection with Shinji, some scenes, but not too much. So she's the only one in the series, in the movies at least, in this timeline, that isn't like, kind of has no baggage with Shinji, is kind of not weighed down by him. She's not really broken. We don't get that much of her backstory, but she seems like she's freer than the rest of the cast. She's kind of just doing her own thing. So she's the least weighed down. She's the most mature, like, rooting on for Asuka to kind of, deal with her conflict with Shinji, for the other characters to sort of move on, and she's kind of helping out in the background. So she felt like the least weighed down and also the least sort of involved with Shinji, that now at the end, Shinji's choosing a new path, a new life to live, and she's kind of the only other person that wasn't so directly affected by Eva and him, that she can kind of join him on his path. And I think that's why it works that it's her. She kind of represents like a blank slate, and I think that's why that makes sense. To add on more to that, throughout the film, Mari keeps telling Shinji, or she tells him a couple of times, wherever you go, I'll find you wherever you are, or something along those lines. She's gonna just find him wherever he is or meet him there. And I took that to mean, especially at the end, when he chose his path, when he chose a life without Ava existing, and honestly a life without kind of the connection with everyone else, he kind of let them go. Mari's words kind of resonate in that instance, that she'll meet him wherever he is in life, whatever path he chooses, she'll meet him halfway, instead of him having to kind of either go out of his way or her having to go out of her way. They're kind of meeting on the same ground. And I thought that was like pretty healthy, and that's what Shinji needs. That's really what he needs now, that path where he doesn't really need to look back or make up for anything, but he can just kind of move forward, and there's someone there that's willing to kind of meet him where he is in life and walk with him. And also realistically, after thinking about it a lot more, it was a nice touch. It was great how Asuka just kind of woke up and it's like her older, like 28-year-old self. The art style was fantastic. It really did show. It's very, very subtle, but from like the suit being torn up, it being like really tight on her facial features looking like a bit older, her face looking like pointier, especially in comparison to Shinji in the shot. She definitely did look older, so I think that was the implication is that it was her 28-year-old self. With that, I felt like it was good that we finally got that closure between them, that they did like each other, but they were now at different points in their lives. Asuka had moved on. It had been 14 years. That was just kind of a crush from when she was younger, and Shinji liked her then, but now he's somewhere else, and that's okay. And also, they were just two broken people. They might have never worked out. What Asuka needed was something that Shinji could never give to her, and what Shinji needed, in Asuka's words, was not a lover, but a mother. At least this Shinji for the majority of the movie. By the end, maybe not so much, but at the end of the day, he needed to let her go, and kind of find her own happiness away from Eva, away from him, and away from all of that stuff. Now, I'm not going to address the whole thing about the clones and if she was the real one. I'm totally confused on that, so if anyone finds like a better theory explanation for that, I'm all ears. I don't know from what breadcrumbs in the movie you're going to find it, but if you do, I commend you, and I'm all ears. And Shinji, him growing up was being able to let her go. Not like in End of Evangelion where she was the first one that came back and he's literally, choking her. That's him not letting go. They just weren't right for each other, and that's what I had to kind of come to terms with. It just wasn't meant to be in that regard. Admittedly, I do have to say, one of the first things that I did think once I saw Mari end up with Shinji in the end was that it was supposed to be a representation of Anno's wife, because I thought to myself, I was like, wait, is this, did he get married after End of Evangelion and all of that? And maybe this is kind of like, like him kind of writing about how his wife was able to kind of bring him out, not of his depression, because I think he was already cured of his depression, but like, to be happier, to show him, a happier life. So I don't want to assume that it's supposed to be her, because I was reading that he didn't originally plan for Mari. That was a request by one of the producers to have her as a character, and he wasn't completely always sure what to do with her besides, be the one that quote unquote destroys Eva. So, it wouldn't be fair to say, oh, that's like him writing his wife into it. But I do say, and I think because Evangelion is such a reflection of Anno, is that she's more of a representation, not directly of his wife, but kind of what Anno knows of love now and of happiness. Because that's sort of like, how they say writers, they write what they know. End of Evangelion and the original TV series, he could only give the answer organically that he knew of. He couldn't give you an answer that was something beyond him. It was sort of what it was in his experience, his own realizations. And the Anno of the rebuilds and kind of what he's experienced now and the life he's living now compared to back then is totally different. And this was sort of like, I think, his answer to that. It's both Shinji finding self-acceptance, but also being willing to be mature enough to let go and not make his issues other people's problems, and kind of figure it out and handle it himself, but also being able to find someone that can kind of walk on equal footing with them, that he doesn't have to sort of rely on them to solve his issues, but they could also enhance his life. Another source for this of how Anno's life has really changed since he created Evangelion is this afterword that I stumbled upon. He wrote an afterword for his wife's manga back in 2000, around 2005, which is around the time he decided to start the rebuilds. And the afterword said something along the lines of this: "What's amazing about my wife's manga is that she doesn't create any out from reality. Most manga these days are no more than a device to provide readers with a refuge from reality to satisfy them out there. The bigger fans they are, the more likely they'll become one with the fantasy and have difficulty accepting anything else. My wife's manga leaves a bit of energy to readers as they return to the real world. Instead of making you want to dwell in yourself, her manga makes you want to go outside and do something. It emboldens you. It's a manga for tackling reality and living among others. My wife lives like that, and I think that's why she can write like that. Her manga accomplished what I couldn't do in Eva in the end. It was a big shock to me, really." And if that isn't telling, that kind of says it all. And I'm really glad that Anno has been able to kind of find this within himself. And okay, honestly, I do find it funny because I've joked about Evangelion, and even in the rebuilds, the message just really boiling down to just being Anno telling you, go outside. That's it. He just wants you to go outside. But I find it even more funny that he freaking doubled down and just made it as clear as day at the very end and showed you the outside world. Just like literally the characters are just going outside, and that's what you should do after walking out of this theater. Go outside. That's it. That is the message. Appreciate the outdoors, appreciate reality. Don't cling to Ava. But it was a very good message, because what was so good about the movie is that narratively, in the narrative and in a very meta way, it's Anno, Shinji, all of them moving on, moving away from Evangelion. What it really did for me is it really brought it home that this is what Anno wanted all along. This is the ending he was searching for. And I'm so glad that, for Ava as a fan, and also for him, that he really got to end it on his own terms. It's what I had read in interviews of what was going through his mind in the original TV series, that he wanted Shinji to just have an organic, happy ending, to find a way that he could naturally be happy. And, for the TV ending, for some people seemed very contrived, a very forced way to make him happy. But the answer all along was he just needed to be completely separated from Ava. He just needed to move on completely from Ava, because Ava is the womb. And maybe some of you were wondering during the middle of the film, like, Shinji rewriting all of reality, isn't that a fantasy? Because isn't accepting reality supposed to be accepting it for what it is, no matter how bad it is? Rewriting it is a fantasy. You can't rewrite it. The point is that you're stuck with it. That was the whole point of, and the Evangelion, that was the whole point of the TV ending, where he was just like, you know what, even if it's painful, I'm gonna come back. And I'm gonna say no, because what is the fantasy is the Evangelion itself. Because no matter how painful, it's the ultimate representation of running away, of living in the fantasy, of having the power trip, of a crutch that Shinji uses to kind of give himself a sense of worth to go through reality. And him choosing to not only not rely on it, that was a double negative, and him choosing to not only leave it behind, but also free everyone else from it, even at the cost of them no longer being associated with him, is truly moving forward. Because since 3.0, it was starting to show that everyone had already moved forward, had already, even if the world was crap after near third impact, everyone had already kind of lived their lives for 14 years trying to kind of trudge through this to survive. And Shinji was the one stuck in the past, literally comatose, and he woke up and he was the one still kind of there when everyone had already started to move forward, and he was still trying to sort of redo the past. When people were telling him, don't get back into Ava, don't pilot again, and he was being stubborn, getting back into it to try to redo everything, but ended up making everything worse for everyone, which that was the point, that it wasn't just about him. The point is that he's making it worse for everyone else, even though he's trying to redo his mistakes for himself. It's about everyone involved. So the most selfless thing he could do was to sacrifice himself in the end so everyone could be free. But thankfully, his mother, came in through clutch, and she finally did her motherly duties and sacrificed herself with the Ava along with Gendo, and they got to be together, and everyone got to be happy. This is the ending that made the most sense. It was the ending completely separated from Ava, and that's why this was a happy ending, not for just Shinji, but for everyone involved. Minus Fuyutsuki. I don't know what the fuck happened with him. I think he's the only one that became LCL goop, and he got nothing out of it. Nothing at all. He was ready for instrumentality, and that did not happen. That did not happen at all. Everyone else, happy ending. Fuyutsuki, we don't know where he is. And if you're disappointed with Ava, I totally understand. If you were disappointed with the ending, when I first watched it and I was seeing the credits roll, I was really just, I'm like, give me that after credit scene. Something's gotta happen. And you know what? There might be more Ava in the future. I wouldn't be surprised if in the Blu-ray release, 3.33 plus 1.11, I wouldn't be surprised if after the credits roll, it plays out like this.
Shinji Ikari.
I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
Anyways, guys, I just wanted to do something a little more informal, different. I just wanted to get my thoughts out of there. Will I revisit this? Maybe do something more in depth in the future? I'm not sure yet. I most likely will. I love Ava, but for now, no promises. If you enjoyed the video, let me know in the comments. You could always feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. Besides that, I'm OniMaru, and I'll see you guys in the next video.